Welcome to this week's Orbital Transport's Deep Dive podcast, where we discuss space domain awareness and all the issues around that subject.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we are shooting for the stars, but not quite how you might think.
Yeah, no spacesuits required for this one.
Exactly. So we're talking about space junk and light pollution and like the surprising conflict between all the cool space tech we're launching and keeping our view of the cosmos crystal clear.
It's something we've been looking into, and honestly, it's a bigger deal than a lot of people realize.
I bet. So space junk, we're talking about more than just like a lost astronaut's wrench, right? This deep dive, we're looking at a document about all new ways to track satellites, and it's made me kind of obsessed with what's actually up there.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, spent rocket stages, defunct satellites, even tiny fragments from collisions, all of it's zipping around at crazy high speeds, and even a fleck of paint can cause serious damage when it's traveling at thousands of miles per hour.
Yikes. See, this is what I mean. Like, space is big, right? So how do we even begin to keep track of all that stuff?
That's where space domain awareness, or SDA, comes in. It's about knowing what's up there, where it's going, and making sure nothing bumps into each other.
Okay, makes sense. But like, practically speaking, how do we do that?
Well, think of it like a giant game of cosmic radar. We use radar systems here on Earth, telescopes, even lasers to detect and track objects in orbit. We're talking some seriously advanced tech.
Lasers in space.
Yeah.
All right, now you're just showing off. But seriously, that's super cool. So we can see all this stuff, but then what?
Well, that's where the challenge comes in. Even with all this tech, keeping track of everything is a massive undertaking. Think about the more satellites we launch, the more crowded it gets, and the greater the risk of collisions.
And more collisions means what? More debris? So it's like a snowball effect?
Exactly. It's called the Kessler syndrome, and it's a real concern. Basically, enough collisions could create so much debris that it triggers a chain reaction, making space navigation incredibly dangerous, or even impossible.
Okay, that is kind of terrifying. So more tracking equals less chance of us creating a cosmic minefield up there. Got it. But I'm guessing there's a downside to all this tracking.
You're right, there is. All those radar beams, radio waves, and lasers, they create a kind of pollution light and radio wave pollution. And that has a big impact on astronomy.
Oh, right. I remember reading about this. All those satellites reflecting light back at Earth are making it harder to see the stars.
Exactly. Astronomers are finding it increasingly difficult to observe faint objects in the night sky because of this interference. It's like trying to stargaze in a city, but on a much larger scale.
That's a bummer. I mean, we're out there exploring the universe, but in the process, we're making it harder to even see it.
It's a tough trade-off, and it's not just the professional astronomers who are affected. Think about all the amateur stargazers, photographers, or even just people who find solace in looking up at a clear night sky. Light pollution takes away from that experience.
Totally. And I imagine, like, cultural practices and traditions are wrapped up in this too.
You're absolutely right. Many indigenous communities have traditions and stories tied to the stars, passed down through generations. This light pollution threatens that cultural heritage. And for what? A clearer Instagram photo.
It definitely makes you think twice about our impact on, like, not just the planet, but the entire cosmos.
Yeah.
So is there any way to fix this, or at least make it better?
That's the million-dollar question, and the good news is that there are some really clever ideas out there. One solution that's gaining traction is the use of satellite tracking aids.
Tracking aids, so like putting little GPS trackers on each piece of space junk?
Sort of, though it's a bit more complex than that. Think of it like giving satellites license plates and tail lights. These aids can range from simple dog tags with basic identification info to more advanced transmitters that send out signals, making them easier to track from Earth.
Okay, so like if we can see them better, we can avoid them better.
Precisely. And there are different types of aids for different needs. We have retroreflectors, special mirrors that reflect light back to its source, even with very low power.
So less light pollution A&D, easier tracking. Sounds like a win-win to me.
Right. Of course, there are always challenges. Active aids, like transmitters, need a power source, which can be tricky for smaller satellites. Passive ones like those reflectors, they're great, but they don't give us real-time data.
Right. Got to weigh the pros and cons for each one. Speaking of being proactive, I was super interested to read about the European Space Agency's Clean Space Initiative. It sounds like they're really trying to get ahead of this problem.
Absolutely. They're focusing on what they call design for demise.
Design for demise. Sounds a bit ominous, doesn't it?
Maybe, but it's actually a really good thing. They're designing satellites that are meant to basically self-destruct. They burn up entirely when they re-enter the atmosphere at the end of their life cycle.
So less debris clogging up orbit. Sign me up for that.
Right. And I think it really highlights that this is about more than just tracking. It's about changing how we think about spacecraft design, launch procedures, the whole shebang. We need to be more mindful of their entire life cycle, from launch to disposal.
And that's on all of us, right? Governments, private companies, even researchers. We've all got a role to play. It feels like a pivotal moment, you know. We've achieved amazing things in space, but there's this growing awareness that we need to be more responsible, more sustainable.
I agree. And I think it boils down to a simple question. Do we want to explore the cosmos in a way that preserves its wonder for generations to come, or keep making the same mistakes?
Hopefully we choose the first option.
I'm with you on that one.
So as we wrap up our deep dive, are you feeling hopeful about the future of space exploration, even with all these challenges?
No, I actually am. We're seeing amazing progress with things like more sustainable propulsion systems, low-impact reflectors, even ideas for satellites that can, like, self-remove at the end of their lives. There are solutions out there, and that's really encouraging.
That is really good news, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. We can be excited about the future of space exploration, but we have to balance that excitement with a sense of responsibility. Right?
Exactly. We can't just keep launching stuff up there without considering the consequences.
Well said. Thanks for joining us for this stellar deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks for listening. For more info, you can contact us directly at orbitaltransports.com.